Every now and again, a strange wildlife story will hit the news. In recent weeks, it feels like these stories are becoming more and more common, and I've already covered 2 of them. The orcas attacking boats off the Iberian peninsula, and the recent dolphin attacks in Japan. Strangely, these stories are just the tip of the iceberg, as I found 3 more recent stories that I think are worth talking about. Some of these news stories are still ongoing, but some have been solved, and our first story takes us to southwestern Berlin. At around midnight on Wednesday of last week, police were alerted to a situation in southwest Berlin. There were reports that a lioness was roaming the forests, and there was even video proof. This video was very dark and grainy, but it didn't appear to be tampered with. The police then took these reports very seriously, and 30 police cars were deployed in the area. As well as this, veterinarians were called to assist in the search for the big cat, and drones and helicopters were also deployed. Residents were told to stay indoors until it was found, and they were also told to keep their pets safe. The search carried on into the following day, and on Thursday evening there was another sighting. A resident claimed that they had seen a lioness chasing a wild boar, and police shouted at nearby joggers to leave the woods. Despite this apparent sighting, there was still no evidence of the lioness, and they were even unable to locate the beast using thermal imaging and night vision cameras. At this point, the police started to contact local zoos and circuses to see if any of them were missing a lion. All the nearby zoos, animal shelters and circuses confirmed that they were not missing a lioness, and at this point it became very clear that the animal that they were searching for was not a lion. Because the footage that was sent to the police was very dark and very grainy, it's hard to make out exactly what the animal is. The video cuts off at a very crucial point, and we don't get to clearly see the animal's face. At first glance it does look like a lioness, but if you analyse the video more thoroughly, you'll notice that this creature looks a bit stockier than a lioness, and its tail isn't as long as it should be. Strangely, I've already mentioned the animal that this video is thought to be of, as it's now believed that the beast of Berlin was a wild boar. Wild boar are very common in southwestern Berlin, and these animals get a lot larger than most people think. They can stand up to 80 centimeters at the shoulder, and some of the largest males can weigh over 200 kilograms. Although most wild boar across Europe don't look very similar to lions, the wild boar in this area are known for being quite pale. Even the mayor of the area was surprised at how pale the wild boar were, and just a few days ago the search for the lioness was called off. Of course, stories like this are not unheard of, but the response is what's made this story stand out. In some cases, reports of crocodiles turn out to be large ducks, and reports of panthers turn out to be large domesticated cats. If you're not knowledgeable about the natural world and you see a large animal, it can be very hard for some to identify it. This can lead to very strange reports such as this one, but it's very rare for the police to react in this way. They deployed so many people with very little evidence, but at least they were playing it on the safe side. If this animal did turn out to be a lion, they were very well prepared, and the locals would have been relatively safe. But thankfully for the people of Berlin and the wild boar, there was no escaped lion in Berlin after all. Our next story takes place across the ocean in Florida, and it involves an ongoing study about sharks. Researchers have been running a few experiments to see how sharks react to drugs. On this channel I've made quite a few videos on animals that like to get drunk and high, and there's a surprising number of stories out there. The vast majority of animals that are in these stories are mammals, and these stories very rarely include fish. Despite this, it is thought that drugs have a noticeable effect on sharks, and it's possible that some sharks could be actively searching for drugs. For decades, Florida has been a hub for the illegal drug trade, and it was in its peak in the 1970s and 1980s. This was at the height of the Miami drug wars, where multiple cartels battled it out for control of Miami. Although the Florida drug trade is not as brazen as it used to be, it's still very much alive and kicking. In June, the US Coast Guard seized over 6 tons of cocaine in the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean, and this had an estimated value of around $186 million. When drug runners get caught with such large loads, in most cases they choose to ditch them in the ocean. This gives them a better chance at escape, and it's also an attempt to get rid of evidence. These drugs can have a massive effect on delicate ocean ecosystems, and they seem to have a massive effect on the sharks too. There have been countless fishermen stories where sharks have been seen eating cocaine, and researchers decided to investigate these stories. They headed over to the Florida Keys, and they started conducting some experiments. The results of these experiments should be taken with a pinch of salt, as they are part of a show for Shark Week. The researchers dropped off some dummy bales of cocaine into the ocean, and they put these bales right next to some dummy swans. To their surprise, the sharks headed straight towards the bales, and they started to take large bites out of them. They did a similar experiment where they dropped fake cocaine bales from an aeroplane, and species such as tiger sharks started to move in. This could possibly mean that some of the sharks have eaten cocaine before, and they're simply repeating the behavior to get some more. As cocaine is soluble in water, it can be easy for the sharks to seek out and find it, and as it's addictive, it would be understandable that they would want to do it again and again. It's unknown exactly how these drugs would affect the sharks, but as cocaine's so soluble in water, it could affect all of the marine creatures in the surrounding area. This story highlights a very important issue, as the majority of our drugs and medicines find their way to the ocean. These drugs and medicines can have an effect on all marine life, and they could have a massive negative effect on the ocean ecosystem as a whole. For now, all we can do is look at the results of these experiments, and hopefully there won't be a crazed cocaine shark patrolling the waters of Florida. For our final story, we will be staying in North America, but we will be heading over to the other ocean. That's because our story takes place in Santa Cruz, and involves a very mischievous sea otter. Off the coast of Santa Cruz, a sea otter by the name of 841 has been terrorizing surfers and paddleboarders. This notorious 5-year-old female has completely lost her fear of humans, and actively approaches surfers to steal their surfboards. She will hop on them and bite them, and then aggressively move towards the surfers to scare them away. If you're unaware, sea otters are surprisingly large, and they are the heaviest species of otter. They can measure up to 1.4 meters long, and they can weigh as much as 45 kilograms. This size means that they can be both cute and intimidating, and it's understandable why some people give up their surfboards. It's extremely rare for a sea otter to approach a human, and it's even rarer for them to try and steal a surfboard. As you might be able to guess, 841 wasn't always wild, and it turns out that she was actually born in captivity. When she was large enough to fend for herself, she was eventually released back into the wild, but because she was captive born, it seems as though she's too carefree around humans. This story once again highlights a very important issue, and it involves people getting too close to wild animals. There's a reason why most national parks put up signs not to feed the animals, because this can lead to animals associating humans with food, and even losing their fear of humans altogether. A surprising amount of animal attacks on humans are due to humans treating wild animals as pets, and not understanding the danger that they are in. If you treat a wild animal as if it were a pet, it puts your life and its life at risk, as it's more likely to approach more people, and then it's more likely to get shot or injured as a result. Currently, there are attempts to try and catch 841, but so far she is evading capture. The plan is to eventually rehome her, as she continues to cause problems in the wild. Hopefully in the coming days this story will have a happy ending, and this cheeky sea otter will have a surfboard of her own. If you think you know of any other weird animal news stories, then let me know down in the comments below. But thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed. If you liked it, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like these. But until next time, goodbye.